President Trump seems pretty obsessed with cutting the trade deficit. Will that be one of the key areas that will have to be met for this to be successful?
Well, the US administration has put a big focus. Their focus has been on manufacturing trade deficit, not really covering things like services, not covering things like intellectual property returns and the stuff that Silicon Valley's been so successful at doing. So it's been a partial focus. I'm sure that will be a focus for NAFTA, but whether or not NAFTA changes that very much, we won't know for a couple of years after signing, and that'll be some time off in the future.
Trump has said NAFTA has been the cause of hollowing out the manufacturing sector. About 750,000 jobs have moved from the U.S. to Mexico, for instance. Fair assessment?
Well, most economic analysis says, yes, there's been jobs lost from that, and they've been in certain sectors like autos, but there's now something like 5 million jobs associated with NAFTA in the United States currently. So there's been big job gains, big job disruption, big move around, big supply chain developments. But there's been quite a lot of positives, and most economists would say it's been net positive for the United States.
Lots of issues on the table. Soft timber, auto, jobs. Are there red lines for Mexico and Canada, for instance?
Well, you never know for sure because negotiating positions aren't going to be completely public, but Canada has talked about the need to maintain a disputes resolution body, and that's an important one for them. The others haven't so much, I don't think, but they'll be pretty clear where their real interests are as this develops. But I think a lot of this is actually about updating NAFTA, and that's why they could all agree about the desirability of doing it. It's 23 years old.
Updating in the areas of e-commerce?
Absolutely. Well, in the areas of services trade, and then how do we do services trade for e-commerce, digital movements, data across borders, privacy, cybersecurity, all those sort of things, much more on investment. And then some of the players, such as Canada, have got some quite innovative ideas about environmental, labour and other standards in all of this as well, and whether you attach those to it.
This optimism that the talks will conclude sometime early next year, is that
That's
being overly optimistic, given that Lighthizer, for instance, known to be a tough negotiator, involved in the battle, the trade talks with Japan back in the 1980s, it will be tough?
Well, they might get there, but I mean, the record of 150 trade agreements around APEC is that they take a lot longer than leaders think they're going to, and the devil is in the detail, and like it or not, you have to allow your officials to get right into those, and that takes a lot of time, and sometimes one player can hold it up for strategic reasons if they want to.
So what does that mean? What if there is no conclusion, there's no agreement, and from APEC's perspective, what is the best outcome?
Oh, well, from APEC's perspective, we would like to see this developing in a way that promotes trade, doesn't distort trade, that it's potentially open-ended, that it could be NAFTA potentially plus others, or that it could be in line with others. TPP was seen as a good quality template, and it could be, it'd be ironic, but it could be that NAFTA may pick up some of that TPP text and put it in as well. We'll be looking at that along with all the other trade agreements and saying how do they all come together. We want to see them all converge, not go off in different directions, and contribute to this big trade-driven growth machine around APEC.
Dr. Bollard, do you think it is hypocritical in a way? The US pulled out of TPP, and now they're talking about using TPP as a basis, as a jumping block for NAFTA negotiations.
Well, I'm an economist. I only do economics. I think it's surprised us, but then why wouldn't you? If that's the best text that was negotiated principally from the US in the closing year of TPP negotiation, and it looks advantageous to the US.
President Obama positioned NAFTA as a way of competing with China. Do you expect the current President Trump to adopt the same approach?
Well, it is interesting that at some stage in the negotiations, I guess those three economies are going to say, well, it's not just us against one another, it's us against other trading partners, and that particularly means North America against East Asia competitiveness. So those issues are going to come up. Now, how it's positioned becomes a political feature, not an economic one, but they'll be looking not just at the competitiveness of the US auto industry, but the competitiveness of a combined auto industry against other East Asian exporters.
I want to pick up on China. President Trump has said that, do you see a trade war between the U.S. and China likely given Trump's position on intellectual property?
No, but we all know the risks have gone up. We've just had an APEC Business Council meeting in Canada. They're quite concerned about these things and they're urging that this shouldn't happen. But I don't think these things would blow up quite suddenly. We've got a year when the US is conducting some bilateral examinations of various aspects of trade with other partners. Some of those are going to come out roughly at the time we have the APEC leaders meeting in Da Nang in November. That's probably when we will see a number of those things. We'll also incidentally then see whether the TPP 11 leaders have decided to change the articles of adoption and start off on TPP.